Have you ever wondered if the worst day of your life might actually be the doorway to your greatest purpose? Sometimes the deepest pain carries within it the seeds of an extraordinary future we cannot yet see. Welcome back to Truth Wisdom. If you enjoy Bible stories told in a calm and meaningful way, feel free to subscribe and follow along. Now let's begin today's story about a young man whose dreams seemed to die in a pit, only to be fulfilled in a palace. In the ancient land of Canaan, a man named Jacob had 12 sons. Among them all, he loved Joseph most dearly, for Joseph was the son of his beloved wife Rachel, born to him in his old age. This favoritism did not go unnoticed. Jacob's love for Joseph was visible to everyone, especially when he gave the boy a magnificent coat, a robe of many colors, richly ornamented and beautiful, the kind worn by favored sons who would not work in the fields but would be set apart for something greater. Joseph's brothers watched this unfold with growing resentment. Every time they saw that colorful coat, it reminded them that they were not their father's favorite. The coat became a symbol of inequality, a constant irritation that festered in their hearts. They could not speak a kind word to Joseph. The household was divided, and tension hung in the air like smoke. But Joseph had something else that set him apart. He was a dreamer. One morning, Joseph came to his brothers with excitement dancing in his eyes. He had dreamed a dream, and he wanted to share it. In his dream, they were all in the field binding sheaves of grain. Suddenly, Joseph's sheaf stood upright, tall and proud, while all his brothers' sheaves gathered around it and bowed down before it. The brothers stared at him in disbelief. The silence was cold. "Do you actually intend to reign over us?" they asked, their voices dripping with contempt. "Will you really rule us?" The dream ignited their hatred like oil thrown on fire. Who did this 17-year-old boy think he was? Joseph dreamed again. This time he saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. When he told this dream to his father and brothers, even Jacob rebuked him. "What is this dream you have dreamed?" he asked. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" Yet while his brothers burned with jealousy, Jacob quietly pondered these things in his heart, wondering what they might mean. Time passed, and the brothers took their father's flocks to graze in the distant fields near Shechem. Jacob, concerned for their welfare, sent Joseph to check on them and bring back word. Joseph put on his colorful coat and set out on the long journey, his heart perhaps filled with thoughts of reconciliation, unaware of the darkness brewing in his brothers' hearts. When his brothers saw him coming from a distance, with that distinctive coat visible even from afar, something snapped inside them. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to one another, the words laced with venom. In that moment, conspiracy was born. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these pits. We can say that a fierce animal devoured him. Then we will see what becomes of his dreams." The casual cruelty of their plan is chilling. They were ready to murder their own brother and lie to their elderly father, all to silence the dreams that threatened their pride. But Reuben, the eldest, felt a pang of conscience. Perhaps he remembered his responsibility as the firstborn, or perhaps he thought of his father's grief. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him." Reuben secretly planned to come back later and rescue Joseph, to restore him to their father. When Joseph reached his brothers, they seized him with rough hands. They stripped off that hated coat, that beautiful symbol of favor, and threw him into an empty cistern. The pit was deep and dry, its walls too smooth to climb. Joseph must have cried out, pleaded with them, but they sat down to eat their meal, ignoring his desperate voice echoing from below. They ate bread while their brother languished in darkness. Then they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelite traders approaching, their camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, heading down to Egypt. Judah saw an opportunity. "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood?" he reasoned. "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." The brothers agreed. Perhaps they convinced themselves this was mercy. They pulled Joseph up from a pit. Imagine his relief at seeing daylight again, only to realize he was being sold like livestock. 20 shekels of silver changed hands, the price of a slave. Joseph was bound and led away, watching his homeland disappear behind him with every step. The dreams that once seemed so vivid now turned to ash. His cries, his questions, his pleas, all went unanswered as he was dragged toward Egypt, toward an unknown future in a foreign land. The brothers took Joseph's coat, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the beautiful garment in its blood. They brought it to their father. "We found this," they said, their faces masks of false concern. "Please examine it to see whether it is your son's robe or not." Jacob recognized it immediately. His face crumpled in anguish. "It is my son's robe," he said, his voice breaking. "A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Jacob tore his garments in grief, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. His children tried to comfort him, but he refused all consolation. "No," he said, "I shall go down to the grave mourning for my son." The old man's heart was shattered, and the brothers had to live with what they had done, watching their father's grief day after day. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. The young Hebrew found himself in a strange land with strange gods, strange language, and strange customs. Everything familiar was gone. His father believed him dead. His dreams seemed like cruel jokes. Yet something remarkable began to happen. The Lord was with Joseph. Even in slavery, even in a foreign land, even when everything seemed lost, God's presence remained. Joseph proved himself capable and trustworthy. Potiphar noticed that everything Joseph touched seemed to prosper. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's household for Joseph's sake, blessing the house and the field alike. Potiphar saw that the Lord was with Joseph and made everything succeed in his hands. So impressed was he that Potiphar made Joseph overseer of his entire household, putting everything he owned under Joseph's care. Potiphar did not concern himself with anything except his food. For a slave, this was an extraordinary rise. Joseph had gone from a pit to a position of trust and authority. Perhaps he began to see a glimmer of hope, a possibility that life could be rebuilt even from ruins. But another test was coming. Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and Potiphar's wife noticed. Day after day, she cast her eyes upon him with desire. "Lie with me," she said, brazenly propositioning him. But Joseph refused. "Look," he said to her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house because of me, and he has put everything he owns in my charge. No one is greater in this house than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" Joseph's integrity shone like gold. He had every reason to be bitter, to feel that God had abandoned him, to take what pleasure he could find. He was a slave with no rights, no protection. Who would blame him? But Joseph saw clearly. This was not just about betraying his master's trust. It was about sinning against God. His relationship with the Lord was the one thing slavery could not take from him. But Potiphar's wife would not relent. She spoke to Joseph day after day, pressuring him, tempting him, and he refused day after day, even avoiding being in her presence. Then came a day when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were inside. She caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." Joseph fled, running from temptation so quickly that he left his garment in her hand and ran outside. A man of integrity had run from sin, but he left behind evidence that would be twisted into a lie. When she saw that he had left his garment and fled, fury and humiliation filled her. She called the household servants. "See," she said, her voice shaking with false indignation, "he has brought among us a Hebrew to laugh at us. He came into me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And as soon as he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried out, he left his garment beside me and fled outside. When Potiphar came home, she told him the same story, showing him Joseph's garment as proof. Potiphar's anger burned. He took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were confined. Once again, Joseph found himself in darkness. Once again, he was punished for something he did not do. From favored son to slave, from trusted overseer to prisoner. The trajectory seemed to be heading only downward. Where are the dreams now? Where was God's promise? But even in prison, a pattern continued. The Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. The prison warden noticed something special about this Hebrew prisoner. Joseph found favor in his sight, and the keeper put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners and everything that was done there. The keeper paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with him and made whatever he did succeed. Years passed in that prison. Joseph might have wondered if he would die there, forgotten and alone. But God was preparing him, shaping him, building his character in the darkness. Then one day, 2 new prisoners arrived, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker, both imprisoned because they had offended their lord. They were placed under Joseph's care. One morning, Joseph came to them and saw that they looked troubled. "Why are your faces downcast today?" he asked with genuine concern. They replied, "We have had dreams, and there is no one to interpret them." Joseph's response revealed his heart. "Do not interpretations belong to God? Please tell them to me." The cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream, there was a vine before me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and the clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." Joseph listened carefully, and the Lord gave him understanding. "This is its interpretation," he said. "The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office, and you shall place Pharaoh's cup in his hand as formerly, when you were his cupbearer." Then Joseph made a simple request. "Only remember me when it is well with you, and please do me the kindness to mention me to Pharaoh, and so get me out of this house. For I was indeed stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the pit." The baker, seeing that the interpretation was favorable, eagerly told his dream. But Joseph had to deliver hard news. In 3 days, Pharaoh would lift up the baker's head and hang him on a tree. 3 days later, on Pharaoh's birthday, everything happened exactly as Joseph said. The cupbearer was restored, and the baker was executed. Yet the cupbearer forgot Joseph. 2 more years passed. 2 more years of waiting, of hoping, of wondering if that moment of opportunity had come and gone. Joseph remained in prison, faithful and forgotten. Then Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams. He stood by the Nile and saw 7 healthy, plump cows come up from the river to graze, followed by 7 ugly, thin cows that devoured the healthy cows. He woke, then slept again and dreamed of 7 plump ears of grain on one stalk, followed by 7 thin, scorched ears that swallowed up the healthy ears. In the morning, Pharaoh's spirit was troubled. He called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, but no one could interpret his dreams. Then the cupbearer suddenly remembered. "I remember my offenses today," he said, and told Pharaoh about the Hebrew prisoner who had correctly interpreted dreams in prison. Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph. They rushed him from the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his clothes before coming before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I have had a dream, and no one can interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph's response was remarkable. After all he had suffered, after all the waiting, he did not seize this moment for personal glory. "It is not in me," Joseph said humbly. "God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer." Joseph listened to both dreams, and God gave him not only the interpretation, but also the wisdom on what to do. "The dreams of Pharaoh are one," Joseph explained. "God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears, scorched by the east wind, are also 7 years of famine. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, But after them there will arise 7 years of famine, and all the plenty will be forgotten in the land of Egypt. The famine will consume the land. Then Joseph offered counsel. Let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land during the 7 plentiful years. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Pharaoh looked at his officials and said, "Can we find a man like this, in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then he turned to Joseph. "Since God has shown you all this, there is none so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you." In one day, Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister. Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his own hand and placed it on Joseph's. He clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. He made him ride in his second chariot, and they called out before him, "Bow the knee." Pharaoh gave him an Egyptian name and an Egyptian wife, the daughter of a priest. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, 13 years after being sold into slavery. The 7 years of plenty came, just as Joseph had said, and Joseph gathered grain like the sand of the sea, beyond measure, until he ceased to measure it. Then the 7 years of famine began, also just as Joseph had said. Famine came upon all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When the people cried to Pharaoh for food, he sent them to Joseph, saying, "What he says to you, do." The famine was severe over all the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. The famine reached Canaan. Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt and said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another? I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain, but Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's only full brother, for he feared harm might come to him. When the brothers arrived in Egypt and came before Joseph to bow down with their faces to the ground to buy grain, Joseph recognized them immediately, though they did not recognize him. Perhaps the passage of time, his Egyptian clothes, his position of power, or the sheer impossibility of the situation blinded them. Joseph remembered his dreams, the sheaves bowing down, the stars bowing down, and here were his brothers, bowing before him just as God had shown him 20 years before. Joseph spoke roughly to them through an interpreter. "Where do you come from?" he demanded. "From the land of Canaan to buy food," they replied. Joseph accused them of being spies, and they protested, explaining that they were 12 brothers, sons of one man in Canaan, with the youngest still at home and one who was no more. Joseph tested them, keeping Simeon as a hostage and demanding they bring back their youngest brother to prove their words. The brothers spoke to one another in Hebrew, not knowing Joseph understood every word. "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother," they said, "in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." Joseph turned away from them and wept, overwhelmed by the memory and by hearing them finally acknowledge their guilt. The brothers returned to Canaan with grain, but when the grain ran out, Jacob reluctantly agreed to let Benjamin go with them, and they journeyed back to Egypt. This time, Joseph could not maintain his composure. He revealed himself to his brothers. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" The brothers were terrified, unable to answer, stunned by the impossible reality before them. But Joseph said to them, "Come near to me, please." And when they came near, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So, it was not you who sent me here, but God. Joseph had seen what his brothers could not see. What they meant for evil, God meant for good. The pit, the slavery, the false accusation, the prison, the forgotten years, all of it had been God's mysterious path to this moment, when Joseph could save not only Egypt but his own family, the family through whom God's promises to Abraham would continue. Joseph embraced Benjamin and wept, and he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. The brothers who had sold him, who had caused their father years of grief, who had destroyed his youth, he forgave them all. Joseph sent for his father, and Jacob came down to Egypt with all his household. When Jacob saw Joseph alive, he said, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." As you reflect on Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace, from betrayal to becoming a savior of nations, consider taking a moment to share this story with someone who might need encouragement today. Here's something to think about. When have you seen something painful in your life later reveal a purpose you couldn't see at the time? Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.